So this is probably the most wild story of my professional career. Today I'm going to tell a story about how some random guy who could barely speak English or do any real work at all joined my team at a large American corporation, and how I discovered he was scamming us, how we caught him, and how it cost the company over $100,000. And even when we discovered it was a scam, the politically correct HR department was defending him, defending the criminal. This situation is both entertaining and concerning, and it made me think about just how bad AI scams could be in the future, so I thought I'd tell it. I don't really expect to get a lot of views on this. It's just more of like a chill storytime commentary. For those who work at corporate jobs, you get a kick out of this because it just shows how weird corporations can be. But if not, it's entertaining to just learn about this weird corporate culture that American has. So it's a unique situation to a large company, but it reveals a deeper message for how I'll be scared about like what AI is going to become in the future. So enjoy this storytime commentary. After this, tomorrow we'll have the regularly scheduled WhyLearn Wednesday per usual. So here we go. I was on a software development team at a large company, and we were building something like really specific. It was very niche, and not too many people had the skill set we were looking for to build this software product. We really needed a leader. A lot of us weren't that experienced, and we needed to find someone to lead the team. So we tried a few different people in the leadership role, but it just didn't work out. Myself and others on the team were good as contributors, but definitely not enough to lead the team. So therefore, we were having a lot of trouble interviewing to find the correct guy for the job. We were asking for an engineering leader of a very complicated software team. We found very few qualified candidates, and the very few guys we found who were qualified were so good that they were just demanding unreasonable salaries, remote benefits, and just a bunch of crazy arrangements we couldn't make. So we were interviewing for like a year with no luck. And then finally, a guy came through our interview, and this dude was incredible. He passed all the interviews with flying colors, knew the technical details in great detail. Any question we had, he could answer it perfectly. He had great personal and communication skills and just seemed passionate. Sometimes I do conduct interviews, but this time I was not on the interview panel because the position was above me. And our interview process, believe me, it's not a walk in the park. This is standard for a big company, but we have a few rounds. First, an HR screening where people ask general questions about why you want the job and tell you about the company. Then the hiring manager, just make sure it's a good cultural fit and possibly a couple technical questions. Then the final round of the interviews with the whole tech team. You do a technical screening, ask coding questions, and get a feel for your skill level. And this is like the final boss. It's the tough part of the interview where we're asking you about code and stuff like that. It's pretty standard for interviews to be like this at a big company, usually in some order. And we had an A-tier interviewing team. I went through their interview, and these guys are smart and thorough with their questions, and you can't get stuff past them. I mean, this interview was very, very difficult. I'm confident. The interview was also a remote-only interview since they did not live near our city, which will come into play later. But the guy was amazing. We were stumbling over ourselves to give this guy a job offer, and we did it. We got a great guy, and our worries are gone. We finally have this leader that we need. We gave him a great high-paying salary, and we're off to the races. Set his start date, and we're just eagerly awaiting this amazing guy who's going to teach us all how to be better, be successful, right? So it's his first day, which is on a Monday. We flew him into our headquarters to meet all of us, and I saw him, shook his hand. Nothing weird at first. He's going to be working remotely out of New York, but wanted to fly in to meet us for his first week. I had a few small conversations with him, just asking him about his day, his travels, his time in our city, really nothing crazy. But after talking to him for a little bit, my first impression was like, wow, this guy's English level is not very advanced. Now, before the angry mob comes at me for saying that, I have no problems with people with grammatical errors or where English isn't their first language. That's not the point of this. But in this job, this leadership position, you have to convey advanced and technical information all the time. If you do not have a solid English level, you just won't succeed in this job. His English was serviceable at a basic level, like he could have a basic convo, but it was below what I'm used to for like a legit leadership role. I mean, many non-native English speakers are great communicators, but this guy was not. I would literally compare his English level to what my Spanish level is now. I can convey basic information and just say things to get by and listen to people if they're speaking slowly and clearly, but I get lost in fluent and advanced conversations, and it seemed like this was happening to this guy. In our job, you need to be proficient in English. There's no way around it. You're kidding yourself if you think you can, get by in this type of leadership role if you're having trouble even with basic conversational things. But I was actually giving the guy the benefit of the doubt. My first instinct wasn't that this guy's scamming us. It was like, wow, this guy must be an amazing coder and hard worker to make up for this. So that was kind of the first red flag. Next, on Friday, We wanted to do some sort of meet and greet event in the afternoon, kind of get to know you, play some games, like a board game type stuff. Like we do this for special occasions, like when someone joins the team. And we played a very basic game. Like my boss was literally telling us how he played this game with his 4-year-old son, and he picked it up pretty fast. This guy we hired could not play. Like we repeated over and over again what to do in this very simple game. Again, not very complicated to pick up. Like anyone should be able to pick this up. Any normal person, right? Like within 10 minutes. So either he doesn't understand what we're telling him, again, going back to the English, or he's not grasping a very, very simple game. And both of these are red flags, which just left my whole team with a weird feeling going into the weekend. So let's talk about some more red flags. Our software is complicated on our team. Like it usually takes weeks or months to kind of get the hang of our systems and how they all work together so that you can contribute, but you have to work. Like each time someone new joins, we give them a lot of time to get familiar, and we're available to answer questions, stuff like that. Most of the time, even lower level engineers are, they're coming to us, they're asking questions, they're doing test runs of the software, trying to learn and understand, and they're asking us intelligent questions about how everything works. This guy was like radio silence for a week. He would just give some vague updates saying, I'm continuing to learn about how the software works and will be suggesting improvements after my analysis. And for 1 week, we're like, okay, that's reasonable. And maybe this guy is like so good he just gets the software, right? Because the interview was that good. We're like, in our heads, we think this guy is a genius. Week 2 comes around and we're pressing him a little more. Like, is he just that good? He doesn't have questions? Like in the interview, this guy was a genius. I had a one-on-one meeting with him just asking if I could help with anything, and he revealed he was a little bit stressed and burned out and needed some more time to learn the systems. I understood this, conveyed this back to my boss, and we gave him a little more time, but in my head, I'm like, if he's burned out after 2 weeks, this might not be a good situation. At this point, I had heavy suspicions. It's a heavy accusation to make, so I wasn't just taking it lightly. Like, you can't just come out and say someone's scamming us without solid evidence, especially if they're really stressed or have something going on in their personal life. So our whole team was giving him slack, trying to be nice and understanding, and I'd say about 3 weeks had passed by since he was hired and he's supposed to be learning, and my manager was starting to become concerned. Like, he wanted to kind of poke him a little bit. So his strategy was to give him a very easy task to just get momentum going, build his confidence. He took another week on this task with nothing to show for it. Out of curiosity, I picked up and attempted to do his task and completed it in about 30 minutes to an hour. Like, very easy task. My manager then called me into a private meeting, and he says to pair up with this guy on the task, see if I can help him complete it. And I could tell there was suspicion in his voice, like he was concerned as well. So I agreed and messaged the guy and set up a meeting knowing fully how to do the task already. So this next part, in this moment, it's when I figured it out. So I offered to hop on a Zoom call with the guy, and his job was primarily remote. So I knew how to do the task, but I wanted to make him share his screen as to force him to actually do the work, even if I was holding his hand. I wanted him to do the work, not me, because remember, he's a highly paid engineer, and at this point I was a mid-level, so I shouldn't be the one holding his hand. Like, it should be the opposite. So I was already a little bit irritated. So I asked him to share his screen, and we began doing the work, and within about a minute of the call, I began taking notes and recording it secretly because I couldn't believe it. This guy had the tech level of my grandma. Like, he didn't even know how to open a window in a browser, and he wasn't responding to things I was telling him, didn't know basic entry-level computer science stuff. Like, I'm talking 2 + 2 = 4. Like, he was a complete fraud, and I needed a second opinion. I made some BS excuse to get my teammate on the call, just saying like, oh, I'm getting confused. Let me get my coworker in here to help out. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't crazy. This person was as shocked as I was, and I wasted no time calling my boss after to just present my notes and tell my thoughts. And he agreed and said there was some fraud somewhere in the interview process. We just weren't sure. So, like, did a different person do the actual interview and another showed up? And, like, was AI involved? We don't know. So he's gathering a case to present to HR and took my notes and my recordings and stuff. And we're hoping that we can show that he doesn't know the stuff he claimed he knew on his resume or interview. And this was a Friday, and I went home and I was thinking, like, I knew he was a fraud. He's stealing money from the company, and he's, it's honestly affecting my ability to get a promotion. And I'm much better than this guy, so I'm motivated to take him out. So I proceeded to spend the rest of my Friday night to open my own personal investigation. Never mess with the Wisconsin idiot who was committed to justice and had a weird opportunity to get a criminal. Now, I'm a computer scientist, so I pulled the logs of his computer on Slack, and he said he's from New York, and that's interesting because we pay a little bit higher for New York employees due to the cost of living adjustment. But I noticed his Slack logs only had logins from a central time zone. He's not in New York, but he's making New York money. That's interesting. Then I looked his LinkedIn up. I quickly found that his LinkedIn and resume were copy and pasted from a sample resume website. How did HR miss this? Like, it was so obvious pretty quickly. This was a complete fake. And now this guy's sitting here making, I don't know, $200,000 a year or whatever we paid him. And I'm just like, if some idiot like me can go and find this stuff in one night of investigating, like, how did HR miss this? I then looked into the types of ways he could have scammed us. Remember, the people interviewing him were no dummies. These are very high-level, successful engineers. So I found a couple things. One of them is a proxy interview. So this is a type of scam where one person interviews, and this person is often very qualified, knowledgeable, well-spoken. And then he sends another person to show up for the actual job. These two people split the revenue until the person who doesn't know anything inevitably gets fired. But they wasted a bunch of our time and took a salary, right? So we considered this, but everyone on the interview panel claimed it really was the same person in the interview that showed up in person. Like, there's multiple people said this, so we ruled this out. The next one is what I'm going to call test dummy interview, which is where you send one of your buddies who goes in first to the interview and then fails it, but gets a hold of most of the interview questions. And then when he has all the questions, he passes them on to the next guy who can then answer them well and get the job because he knows what answers or what questions to expect. Where this fails and where this was ruled out is that each of our interviews are pretty dynamic. Like, depending on your answers, we have random follow-up questions depending on, what they wanted to ask that day. So we ruled this out as well. The next one is what we thought, which is a different version of the proxy interview, is using an AI face masking software. So there was actually this other guy who was very qualified, but he used an AI face mask to cover his face with the person who showed up for the job. That way we think it's still him, and we think he's qualified, but it is really a completely different person. This is what we thought it was because the other options just didn't make sense for us. The problem here, we don't have a recording of the interview and can't prove it. So we went to HR with our case. We showed him, videos, evidence of him not knowing what he's doing, but they were like almost defending him. They were like, we can't prove that fraud took place in the interview. And they obviously, it was very clear they didn't want any racism lawsuit or something like that, even though this guy was completely defrauding us. So they said we have to go to the performance route. So if you've never worked in corporate America, this is how it works. If someone has bad performance, you usually issue them some sort of written warning and then give them a specified time to improve. This is called a performance improvement plan. And then if they don't improve, you can fire them. If they do, you can decide whether or not to keep them. It usually takes months, 3 to 6 months I'm talking. So they told us we had to do this because we couldn't prove the interview was fraudulent. And this drove us crazy. We thought HR was just being too politically correct, too afraid to trust the people who have really worked there for years, and it was super frustrating. I mean, we basically have a useless hologram on our team costing us money and time. And my boss was furious. Like, he kept going to HR saying, you're literally protecting a criminal. How can we make this go faster? After a month of pestering, keep in mind, each month that goes by, we're paying this guy a high salary. We finally got HR to issue him a written warning, and he resigned on the spot. He wanted to leave no trail, and that concluded it. And I stalked his LinkedIn. He made it look like he was just working for a different company that entire time. So our team was free again and could hire an actual person, but this guy went on. He scammed us. He cost, we probably paid him $40,000, and his cost was hundreds of thousands in the company's time. Something in me has a feeling he's still out there scamming multiple companies at once because he didn't do any actual work the whole time. And it was just crazy. It really opened my mind to how these AI scams are going to get out of control. The phone calls, the face masking, holograms, and videos. We don't know the impact AI is going to have on us, so be extremely careful. Anything could be a scam nowadays, especially when it comes to AI. So anyways, that's my story time. I hope you enjoyed it. It's not really a traditional pattern with my videos, but I thought it was interesting, so I thought I'd share. Thanks, everyone, and a good rest of your day. WhyLearn Wednesday tomorrow. Peace.